The mother of one of the victims of Colin Pitchfork has called on the government to throw away the key after it emerged that the double child killer has been granted a fresh parole hearing. Barbara Ashworth's 15-year-old daughter, Dawn, was raped and murdered by Pitchfork in 1986, just a few years after he killed schoolgirl Linda Mann.
He was jailed for a minimum of 28 years in 1988, but was released in 2021, only to be recalled 2 months later. Well, the killer is now making a fresh bid for freedom.
We're joined now in the studio by former Met Police Detective Peter Bleksley. Thanks for coming in, Peter. Well, you can understand the anguish of poor Dawn Ashworth's mother, Barbara. She just said her first reaction when told this, that the Parole Board had decided to grant this guy another chance of getting out. She's just said, words fail me. And the point is that this guy got his chance of freedom in 2021, was after a long, long time, 36 years or something behind bars, was allowed out into the community, had terms of his parole, went straight down the local girls' school and started harassing the teenage girl pupils. And when he went back to the Parole Board in December, the Parole Board, to its credit, just said, no, mate, you're not getting out. He has since challenged them legally. They have collapsed, folded and said, all right, you can have another hearing. This is a waste of taxpayers' money, unless, heaven forbid, they're actually thinking of letting this guy out.
This monster should never, ever walk the streets or taste freedom in any way ever again. And I'll just provide some detail, if I may, about Pitchfork's offending, which is not getting the airtime I feel it should. His first criminal conviction was for indecent exposure, exposing his penis to a female. He then went on to sexually assault a teenage girl. And then when he was eventually arrested for the 2 rapes and murders, he was also convicted of perverting the course of justice, because in relation to the second murder, he got a fellow work employee to go and pretend that he was Colin Pitchfork when he gave a DNA sample. Pitchfork was the first person convicted on DNA evidence. And finally, just to throw into the mix, and I hope that every member of the Parole Board is listening to this, when questioned by detectives about his prior offending, Pitchfork admitted to 1,000 offences of indecent exposure. He represents a threat to every woman and girl in this nation, and by extension, any man, husband, boyfriend, partner that could stumble across his offending and want to take the law into their own hands. He should never be released.
What is going on? Because, you know, this is a story, whether it's Colin Pitchfork, whether it's the killers of Jamie Bulger, round and round it goes, that these parole boards seem to pop up like whack-a-mole every few minutes.
Harry Glitter.
They do. In fact, they did a bit of a PR campaign not so long ago, and they allowed the BBC to come in and do a sort of fly-on-the-wall kind of documentary to see how the Parole Board worked. It was lamentable. I watched it so viewers and listeners don't have to. But honestly, to sit there and see the machinations of them, it was blatantly obvious that there's too much fluff in the Parole Board. There needs to be a spine, and people like Pitchfork must never, ever be
Let's
released.
think about Barbara Ashworth's rights and the rights of her poor daughter and her other victim, Linda Mann, and her family as well. Let's think about their rights and stop thinking about the rights of monsters like Colin Pitchfork. It is a joke and it is wasting our money and our time. Just before you go, Peter, 3 people accused of displaying images of paragliders at a pro-Palestinian march have been found guilty of showing support for a terrorist group. This, of course, would be a reference to the paragliders that Hamas used to fly over the Israeli border on October the 7th. So your thoughts on this development?
Good. I'd like to see the police be very firm with those who attend these pro-Palestine marches and chant quite sickening words that display things that clearly break the law I want to see the police acting robustly and firmly against such offenders. And I'll give credit where it's due. Last week, the Home Secretary announced further laws to come onto the statute book for exactly these kind of offences and similar things, climbing on monuments, face masks and the such
Let's
like.
hope the pro-Palestine police actually enforce these laws.
That would be very welcome for millions of Brits.
It
Thank
really
you
would.
ever
Thank you, Peter.
so much.
Peter
Always
Bleksley there.
love you in the studio.
Always a pleasure.